Nestled in the heart of the Appalachian Mountains, the town of Pine Hollow was a haven of tranquility. The air was crisp, filled with the scent of pine and damp earth, while the gentle murmur of the nearby stream added to the soothing ambiance. The community thrived on simplicity, with its small, closely knit population living a life steeped in tradition and isolation. The townsfolk were familiar faces, farmers, artisans, and families whose roots ran deep into the fertile soil of Pine Hollow. Children played in the sun-dappled streets, their laughter ringing like music, while neighbors shared stories over fences or during Sunday potlucks. Time moved slowly here, almost reverently, each season marking the rhythm of life. That tranquility, however, began to fray with an unremarkable, yet sinister, event. The livestock started to die. At first, it was just a few sheep on the McAllister farm. Old man McAllister shrugged it off, attributing it to the changing weather. But when the cows at Johnson's dairy followed suit, unease rippled through the community. The town's unofficial leader, Sheriff Tom Hayes, a stout man with a thick mustache and a heart of gold, held a meeting in the community hall. The wooden structure, built generations ago, creaked under the weight of anxious townsfolk. They gathered in clusters, murmuring about the deaths. Sheriff Hayes, standing behind a makeshift podium, addressed the crowd, his voice steady. "Folks, I know we're worried. It's just a few animals. It could be a virus or something else that'll pass," he reassured them. "Let's keep an eye out, but I don't think we should panic just yet." As the crowd dispersed, many left unconvinced. Old Mrs. Thompson, who had lived in Pine Hollow for over 80 years, shook her head. "This isn't normal, Tom. Animals don't just drop dead without a reason." The days passed, and the situation worsened. More livestock fell ill, their bodies bloating unnaturally, eyes glazed over with a hollow emptiness. The farms, once bustling with life, turned eerily quiet. The townsfolk began to lock their doors, and the sense of safety that had pervaded Pine Hollow was slowly replaced by an encroaching fear. Meanwhile, Dry. Ellen Carter, the town's only physician, took it upon herself to investigate. A former city girl who had returned to her roots, Ellen was a woman of science and reason. She gathered samples from the dead animals, hoping to uncover the cause. Each day, she visited the makeshift clinic, working tirelessly to analyze what she found. The local news reported on the livestock deaths, but the coverage was sparse, brushing the issue off as a rural inconvenience. Ellen knew better. As she peered through her microscope late one night, exhaustion tugging at her eyelids, she saw something that sent chills down her spine. Strange, twisted microorganisms multiplying at an alarming rate. Could it be a parasite? She wondered aloud, scribbling notes frantically. The thought of it spreading to humans sent her heart racing. A week passed, and then the first human case emerged. A young farmhand named Ben, who had been caring for the infected livestock, stumbled into Ellen's clinic, sweat-soaked and trembling. His skin had taken on a sickly pallor, his eyes wild with fever. Ellen examined him, feeling a sinking dread as she noticed the same signs present in the animals. "Ben, what happened?" she asked, trying to remain calm. "I don't know, Doc. I just felt so weak. Then I started seeing things, shadows, people, it felt like they were calling me," he gasped, clutching his head. As she administered treatment, Ellen couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. The news of Ben's illness spread quickly, and panic began to seep into the very fabric of Pine Hollow. Parents kept their children indoors, and businesses closed earlier than usual. The idyllic life the town had cherished was slowly unraveling. Sheriff Hayes called another meeting, this time with a more somber tone. "We need to act fast. We can't let fear take hold of us. We'll set up a quarantine around the farms, keep folks away from the livestock. Ellen, I need your expertise on this." Ellen nodded, her heart heavy with the knowledge she carried. "We need to understand what we're dealing with. It may be contagious. I'll keep studying Ben and the other animals. If we can find a cure or a way to stop this, we might be able to save our town." As the sheriff and townsfolk began organizing their efforts, a palpable tension hung in the air. They set up roadblocks and increased patrols, but it was clear that their peaceful town was changing, becoming something unrecognizable. That night, as darkness enveloped Pine Hollow, the wind howled through the trees, carrying with it a foreboding sense of change. Little did they know, something far more sinister was brewing in the shadows. The infection was spreading, not just through the livestock, but also among the townsfolk, an unseen terror ready to plunge Pine Hollow into chaos. Days turned into a blur of fear and confusion. Ben's condition deteriorated rapidly, and Ellen could only watch in horror as he began to exhibit strange behaviors. He would mumble incoherently, his body jerking with erratic movements. The few who had come into contact with him began to show similar symptoms: confusion, aggression, and an insatiable hunger. One evening, Ellen received a frantic call from the sheriff. "Ellen, you need to come to the old barn on the outskirts. It's bad." As she arrived, a scene of chaos unfolded before her eyes. A group of townsfolk had gathered, eyes wide with terror as they encircled Ben, who was now fully transformed, his skin gray and decaying, a primal growl escaping his lips as he lunged at the crowd. Ellen felt bile rise in her throat as she realized what was happening. The infection had turned him into something unnatural, something that should not exist. Sheriff Hayes pulled out his weapon, his hand shaking. "What do we do? We can't let him get to anyone else." Ellen stepped forward, heart racing. "We need to subdue him, before he hurts someone. We have to contain this." But before they could act, Ben charged toward them, teeth bared and eyes devoid of humanity. A shot rang out, echoing through the still night air, but it was too late. The once quiet town was thrust into a nightmare, and the true horror of what had begun to unfold in Pine Hollow was only just starting. The peaceful life they had always known was gone, replaced by a chilling uncertainty. As the realization set in that they were no longer safe in their beloved town, fear began to grip their hearts, a fear that would soon evolve into a desperate fight for survival against the growing darkness that threatened to consume them all. And so, with the quiet town of Pine Hollow irrevocably changed, the battle against the encroaching nightmare had begun. As the days passed, the town of Pine Hollow descended deeper into unease. The unexplained deaths of livestock weighed heavily on the community, but it was the strange behavior of its residents that truly unsettled everyone. The familiar faces of neighbors, once filled with warmth and camaraderie, now bore the marks of a troubling transformation. Mary, the town's beloved baker, had long been a fixture of comfort for Pine Hollow. Her pastries were known to bring smiles, but recently, her cheerful demeanor had been replaced by a chilling edge. It started with her no longer greeting customers with her usual warmth, her eyes vacant and her voice sharp. The locals whispered that she had thrown a loaf of bread at a child who dared to ask for her signature cookies. On the night of the annual town hall meeting, the atmosphere was thick with anxiety. Residents filled the creaky wooden seats, their faces cast in shadow under the dim lights. Dr. Emily Carter took her place at the front, feeling a sense of responsibility weigh upon her. Having returned to Pine Hollow after years of studying environmental science, she hoped to lend her expertise to help her troubled hometown. But as she scanned the crowd, she could see the changes, the tension, the furtive glances. The meeting began with the usual discussions of town business, but as soon as the topic shifted to the recent livestock deaths, the atmosphere changed. Emily felt a chill run down her spine as she noticed a group of men in the back row exchanging glances. Their whispers grew louder, and soon one of them, Mark, a usually calm and collected farmer, stood up abruptly. "This is ridiculous. We can't just sit here and pretend everything's normal while our livestock are dying." His voice shook with anger, causing the room to fall silent. The shocked faces turned to him, uncertainty palpable in the air. Before anyone could respond, another resident, Joan, jumped to her feet. "And what do you suggest we do, Mark?" "Panic. Blame each other. We need answers, not accusations." Her eyes were wide, her hands trembling. Emily sensed that this wasn't merely a discussion gone awry, something deeper was at play. She had always prided herself on her analytical mind, but she felt the familiar grip of fear tightening around her as the tension escalated. Mark's face twisted in rage as he shouted back, "You're just as much a part of the problem as the rest of them." The shouting continued, voices rising in a chaotic cacophony, and Emily caught sight of Mary, who sat in the front row, her expression dark and unreadable. For a moment, she locked eyes with Emily, and a chill coursed through her. Mary's once warm gaze was now cold, unyielding, like the eyes of a stranger. In that moment, Emily understood. This was not just stress over livestock deaths. Something had shifted within the townspeople, something biological, perhaps psychological. She had seen the signs in her studies, the slow deterioration of community bonds under the weight of fear and panic.